All right, everybody, this is the web news, and this is actually related to an episode that we just recorded this week. Now, the thing is, the web news comes out quicker, so I will, like, the episode will not be out yet, but it's an is SEO dead episode. So you're listening to this in the future. Is SEO dead? Is going to be in the title somewhere. I'm going to massage that title potentially a little bit for the full length episode. But this is related because this is a big problem. So we when you talk about SEO in 2026/2025, because it's late 2025 right now, we automatically bring up a lot more than just Google. We bring up TikTok, we bring up Instagram, we bring up even the different contents within those platforms like YouTube. Do you make a YouTube length video? Do you do a short? Do you do a live stream? And this goes across other things. Twitch, Instagram, do you make a reel? It's all over the place. And so the thing is that SEO realistically, in a nutshell, has grown beyond page one, position one on Google. You're more or less wanting to be seen in as many applicable places as possible. Reddit, I've said Instagram, I've said all those other things. The problem is that each of these platforms has its own quirks and its own content requirements. Now, some of those quirks are something as simple as like, maybe a feature length video, maybe not, maybe isn't the best place for Instagram. But some quirks are going to be like, hey, upload this exact same video across these platforms, but this one needs hashtags. This one does not. This one should have a caption. This one should not. This one you should cross share. This one you shouldn't. All these different quirks, all these different things. So this, of course, leads to different strategies. There's strategies effectively that are going to work great on some and not work great on others. And all of this culminates in you having to learn a whole bunch of stuff that, by the way, is changing. If January 2026 comes around, February 2026 comes around, and Instagram, does a huge update, and I'm not saying they're going to, but if they do, maybe, carousels are not great. Carousels are bad now for some reason. They don't get as much exposure. Maybe carousels are better than ever. Who knows kind of thing. So this is the issue with SEO, is that we naturally will have a split focus. And so the question for today's web news is, should you focus on one platform, all of them?
Okay.
I chatted a bunch, Mike, so I don't know if you want to kick it
Yeah.
off or you want me to give my thoughts.
No. Yeah. No, I got some thoughts on this. So, from my perspective, this is a cop-out answer. It's definitely going to depend, but almost always you should never focus on every platform. I would say that. So, how I would do it today is probably pick 2 to maximum 3 platforms, depending on the size of your team, depending on how much time you have as an individual, whatever. Find the platforms where your audience is, like where your target audience is, right? So like in some cases, that platform might be Facebook, right? Like if you're targeting certain demographics, Facebook is a dominant platform in some demographics. That might be relevant. In other demographics, like for instance, web development, Facebook is useless. So there's no reason to go to Facebook, right? So you can kind of extrapolate this out to any demographic, any target audience, and find where your audience is. This is easier said than done, because if you don't know where they are, like if you're starting from zero, you might have to experiment quite a bit to find that audience. You might have to go to all of the different platforms on a very wide scale and kind of go really shallow into them until you find something that sticks. And it can happen like where you go to all the platforms, you just post like the same content on all the platforms, and you just keep posting until you have a couple comments, and then you get into the algorithm a little bit and you start seeing posts that are related to the post that you're posting, right? And then once you start getting that on the timeline, you can start to kind of cater to those posts. Like you can see like, oh, I'm posting about this way, it's not doing very well, but this person is posting about it that way, it's doing much better. Maybe I can copy their style, or I can talk to them and comment on their stuff to kind of get into their algorithms. And then you can start to see, but if you do the same thing and then all of a sudden, like on Facebook, you notice I've been doing this for a week or two and I don't see anything relevant, then drop that platform quick, right? Like don't go too deep into it. And I think with that strategy, when you go down the path of just posting relevant content to what your audience likes, you'll eventually you might not even get interactions on that content, but you'll most likely start seeing similar content from other creators that you're posting about. And that's what you're kind of looking for in the initial stages. Okay. You're not looking for that engagement because you're nothing. You're a zero, right? You're looking to get into the groups and get into the timelines and get into the algorithms of the people that are going to be your hyper target audience. And then once you know where those groups are and how they talk, that's when you can hyper focus. And I think today we talked about this on the previous episode. Today, hyper focusing on one platform might not be the play because everything is so spread out and you kind of have to have a little bit of the balls in many courts due to how SEO is working and how quickly stuff is changing. But definitely don't focus too wide. Always, if it's one or two platforms like X and LinkedIn, that's a good combination. X and Threads, that's a good combination. Threads and Blue Sky, whatever. Like having a couple platforms to start off with and going deep into is going to be more beneficial than starting off shallow or going shallow in 6 platforms for 6 months and getting no traction.
I actually agree with you. I just want to add one thing is that if you're a huge corporation, then generally you will stick with all of them even if one isn't working because you'll
Yes.
have like a person that does the research unless you're like trying to specifically find your niche. And the other thing too is we are just a disclaimer more or less. We're talking about organic traffic. We're not talking about sponsors because maybe Meta verified plus you sponsoring is a great thing for your niche. Like that's some research stuff that we haven't done, obviously for your niche, the listener, because we don't know what your niche is that are we posting on, but sometimes paid, stuff is worth it depending on what you're doing. Absolutely. But 100% agree with what Mike said is that, you're spreading yourself too thin if you try to do all of them. If you try to do all of them, if you try to do all of them and you try to be very intentional with all of them, it's not it's probably not going to work out well. So I'll give an example for us. So we were super into Instagram in the very early days, like probably over 5 years ago now, and we were able to get to 2,000 followers on Instagram pretty quickly. And then we fell off Instagram for one reason or another, I don't remember now, and then maybe got busy doing something else. And then when I tried to come back, I was still like a nobody, like I only got 2,000 followers at the end of the day even though like we were posting, really consistent, like I don't know, maybe I want to say a year ago off the top of my head, that might not be accurate. I was posting, stuff that looked good on our timeline. Like it was all, you could see the headings, you could see what you're about to read. I was putting in proper kind of marketing posts, at least I thought so. And it just wasn't doing well. And then I was doing memes for a while and memes were working. And then all of a sudden memes stopped working where I was still getting views and things, but we weren't getting any followers. And it's like, we're stuck at, I forget what it is now, like 3,000 followers. So it's like we gained 2,000 super quickly. And then it's like, well over a year of kind of messing around because the reels were even, I think the memes were more than a year ago now. I think it was last New Year's, Mike, or like around the end of the year, I told you like, hey, I have an Instagram strategy. I want to have like posts be super clean. I want to have our memes be like, in their own reels, in the reels tab, and have things be really accessible and things. And then like I fell off that because it really wasn't producing anything. Like I mean anything. Like our followers would go up 5, then down 7. Then they'd go up 7 and then down 5. And it's what it like, we're fighting for, barely any engagement. We're getting some comments and things. But then TikTok, we're at over 8,000 followers and like I'll leave that thing alone for weeks, if not months sometimes, and it keeps going. And so it's okay if I really want to get into a social media network, like maybe TikTok is the one because it's clearly, getting a bunch of traction in that way. And I will say one thing is that you have to be intentional with the skills that you're trying to learn on what social media platform, but you also need to be intentional with your goals. So like right now we're trying to grow and just be like, known more still. And so, having a whole bunch of great numbers on TikTok is great. However, I will say that if let's, then this is not what's happening, but let's just say, we were running an e-commerce brand and we noticed that TikTok was making us, 100 followers a day, but it was making us $50 a day. So we're gaining 100, but only making 50 a day. And that $50 a day is not going up. But yet I was on Instagram and I was only gaining 10 followers a day, but I was making $100 a day and it was slowly going up. Maybe the less followers is better on that platform. There's a lot of nuance when it comes to different niches and what exactly you're trying to approach. And again, we weren't trying to do that. We haven't tried to do that. So I do think that Mike's right. Start wide and maybe try most, if not all, the platforms that you're interested in reposting content. If you notice something that's a little off, maybe do a little bit of light research because you can get really into the weeds. But maybe if you're like, why is Facebook generating literally nothing? Maybe do a little bit of checking. Hey, maybe I should be using hashtags. Maybe I shouldn't. Things like that. And just keep trying. And if it's not working out, then maybe it is time to move on to a different one. Like Mike and I have been trying, let's say, like for example, with LinkedIn. We've been trying with LinkedIn for a while, and I've been posting, fairly consistently there. I've been pretty busy on the personal side lately, so I haven't posted in a little bit due to some family problems. But the thing is, family health problems, to be clear, not like, I haven't been fighting my family with like in a boxing ring or anything. But the thing is, so it's like I just haven't had the bandwidth to go into LinkedIn and make good posts, and like the growth curve there is like super slow. However, we notice that people are listening from LinkedIn, where it's like maybe I'll only gain 2 followers this week, but when I post, I get 50, 60, 70 listens or something like that on the podcast. So it's okay. Clearly LinkedIn is something that's good, and I shouldn't pay as close attention as other platforms to the follower count. But right now it's like with TikTok, it's like the followers are going up like crazy. Maybe we need to double down and try to really get that. And unfortunately, our Instagram in that is I'm reposting some stuff, but it's virtually abandoned because of this. And I want to be clear, like this web news is not supposed to be all about us, but we're talking in the first, these are the most close encounters I've had with social media. So this is the reason why I'm bringing us up. This is, so you can extrapolate these experiences for your own benefit. Like if you're doing horrible on TikTok, but you're killing it on Reels, and you think that, I'm spending an hour on TikTok, I'm getting nowhere. It's been a few months, been a few weeks, whatever. You gauge the time, and you're like, I could make way better Reels with that extra hour that I'm spending on TikTok. You need to take a look at that, and you need to be like, okay, maybe I'll take that extra hour and make a killer reel and make killer reels and try that for a few months, and we'll see what's happening. Even if you ask like ChatGPT, so just for experimentation this year, I went to ChatGPT and I ended up not following this plan, but I started a project in ChatGPT and I went to it and I asked it, hey, I want to grow on LinkedIn. Like, what do you suggest? And I gave it some parameters and things and gave it my page links and things. And it was like, hey, posting daily or what have you is really good, but this is going to burn you out. And it's like, this is a bot telling me this, right? This is going to burn you out. Why don't we focus on some high quality posts that are, at a less frequent thing? And here's the topics to do. And I didn't end up following the topics. But the thing is that even the bots, are like, hey, there's a time investment here is really what we're getting down to brass tacks with, is that there's a time investment. And how are you supposed to be, the TikTok expert, the Instagram expert, the Reddit expert, and the list goes on and on.
So one thing that I think you and I still kind of disagree with a little bit, I think we're mostly aligned, but I think we kind of disagree is like the benefit of those like consistent generic posts, right? Like if you're spreading yourself thin, you just go and like post consistent posts, cross post them across all the platforms and get a couple views, get a couple clicks on them, whatever. Like, just have that presence out there. I still personally don't see the benefit of that really. Yes, it might bring in a couple extra eyeballs. I just don't see that moving the needle in any positive way, shape, or form. Where I see social media being still a benefit is the connections you can create, like actual genuine connections you can create. And that unfortunately requires significant amounts of like actual helping people, actual commenting, like trying to solve people's problems, you know, being more targeted and more intentional with your time on social media. That's what I'll say. It's not something that's easy, right? And this is why I think it's more successful in the sense because you go in and when you find the community and like the first part that I said initially was like posting stuff that's relevant to your community won't get you any traction, but it'll probably get you to the point where you can find your community. When you find that community, my thought is like you don't really need to post very often. What you need to do is you need to go into that community, look at your timeline, comment, help people out that are asking questions without the intention of them looking at your product, but with just the intention of you building an actual relationship with these people. And once it makes sense to talk about the product that you're trying to talk about, whether it be your brand or whether it be an actual like SaaS that you're working on or your company SaaS, whatever, that's when you bring it up and you suggest it in a more natural way, right? Like you don't have to hide it that you're working on this thing. It's just like, hey, we've been talking a while. This is actually what I'm working on. Do you think it's cool? Those kinds of conversations are going to lead to way more conversions and way more referrals and just a better outcome for you and for the product than constantly posting generic stuff on those platforms with pretty much no eyeballs and no actual like one-to-one connections, right? So this isn't to say that this is the killer marketing strategy. Also, this isn't going to make to really move every like it's not singly, it's not the thing that's going to win, right? What you're really working on is it's part of the marketing strategy. Other marketing strategy being ads, other like word of mouth, being in other communities are still super super important, because social media isn't the only thing that's going to, or it isn't big enough, in my opinion, to drive all the traffic that you're going to require if you want to scale your business. It is a very small funnel, but it is an important funnel in the sense that you get really good feedback from it if you can establish those connections. And if you can establish those connections, they will help you throughout your career. It's not just going to be like one-off things where you can sell a product, but if you're willing to put in that effort, you can actually make genuine friendships. Like in my opinion, it's way more valuable to have one genuine connection than 1,000 followers, random followers on a platform. I'll be very, very honest with that. Like if you can establish one good, genuine connection with a high quality person that matches your goals on one of these social media platforms, it's really, really good. And then you kind of slowly build up that community around yourself. You'll see the changes in your marketing strategy. You'll see the changes in how you approach your products happen a lot quicker when you have like-minded people around you that are all kind of striving towards the same thing, and you're just trying to help them in some way, shape, or form. It sounds holistic or altruistic in that sense, and you still have to put yourself out there. You still have to market. You still have to, plug your stuff. But if you can do it more naturally and you can build that audience more naturally, then that, 100 followers that you create that are actually like invested in you is going to be huge. Because think about it. Think about this. Right now on X, I have 32,000 followers. It means nothing, like literally nothing. I built out those 32,000 followers initially with this strategy, but then I stopped really like, posting on X. I stopped interacting on there. So those 32,000 followers mean nothing. Out of those 32,000, I have like maybe 100 to 200 real connections that I've made. That's all I really care about. I could lose 30 to 31,800 followers, wouldn't change anything. But if I lose those 200, and I have lost a bunch because I stopped interacting and I stopped doing what I was doing, that really affects my reach. That really affects my ability to market successfully. That affects my ability to network. That's, in my opinion, how you should be looking at these kinds of strategies. I think honestly, like those companies that just generically post on social media, unless you're a massive corporation where you already have the reach just from your brand, right? That's a different situation. But if you're a small company, you don't have that reach, just generic posts, completely useless. Again, my opinion,
I was gonna
not
say, like,
not
I'm
like the
definitely
the
like
thing.
opposing of that, because the thing is
Yeah.
that, like, we've seen, like, we're not getting 30,000 downloads an episode. However, we've seen and we've done like several experiments where we'll put out a generic, if you will, marketing post for the podcast, and let's just say we post it on a two or three platforms and we get no likes or anything. We think, oh, it's nothing. But the instant that we get busy and we don't do those generic posts, there is a measurable drop in podcast downloads. And the reason why that is, I think, is because people aren't necessarily looking at it in terms of enough to engage with it, to throw a like or whatever. But to me, when you post generically across, and it has to be like decent posts, it can't just be like, buy this, kind of thing. But to me, like, the strategy is you're effectively keeping the kettle on. Now, if you look at our Instagram, it doesn't look like our kettle is on. And I get that because we are trying to manage the time and things like that. But the thing is, to me, is like you saying the 30,000 plus followers, like, oh, like they don't matter or what have you. See, I disagree with that, because the people that you want the genuine connection with are going to go to your profile. And if you have four people, somebody may not be interested. If you have four followers, somebody might not be interested. If they see 30, they're like, oh, okay, this guy's put in the time, and it's a measure of time. And those people that do not engage, that just lurk, to use a streaming term, they, if we keep posting, we keep in their little personal zeitgeist to an extent. And it's a very difficult thing to measure, but we do see it. We've done this several times where we will intentionally not post for a week or two. And then we see the podcast drop off, and then we're like, oh, we lost a couple hundred downloads. Let's go post next week. And every single time we start posting again, even if we get literally 0 likes across multiple platforms, those 200 downloads goes up. Now we can argue, you know, those 200 don't matter, but if there's something else that does matter so much, then why isn't everybody doing that? That's my thing. Is I think you need to keep the kettle on in a way, because if we think about it, it's like if somebody finds us, if somebody goes on Spotify, and obviously we're on Spotify. I'm answering comments. We're uploading multiple times a week. We're on Spotify. Somebody finds us and they're like, oh, awesome. And their platform of choice to interact is Instagram. And they go to Instagram and they see that our kettle is not on. Like, I don't think they care about the like counts. I think they care about more so the post dates. At least that's what I do. And so when they look at it, they're like, oh, these people aren't around, and they won't drop the follow. They won't message with the DM. Our Discord is largely, not all that active because, the kettle really isn't on. It's one of those things where a lot of people joined, and I'm thankful for them joining, but a lot of people joined as like a support forum. And once they got help with their issue, they stopped answering. And I'm not saying that we're entitled to, them interacting with us constantly on Instagram or Discord, excuse me. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is like, that's what happened. And so it's, if someone wants to try talking to me on there, like I'll talk back if I see if someone tags me or whatever. If I see the notification, like I'm not out of the Discord. It's just like there's nothing going on in there all that much, which is like unfortunate, because the way we ran it was we were like, there's creators that have a Discord, and people who listen to our content will want to go in there and chat. And a lot of the creators that we knew of, which were larger, which is probably our misconception or our mistake, a lot of our followers, they had a lot of followers, those other creators, and they wouldn't really interact in the Discord. The community itself was just like a little ecosystem, and it was like self-sufficient, where people are going in there and they're chatting and things like that, and they'll maybe chat about the latest video that dropped if it's a YouTube creator, for example, things like that. And we thought that's what would happen. And I don't know whether it was like scale or whether it was that support forum thing that messed us up. But it's, if we think about the Discord, it's like, how many people do we see come in and then leave immediately? A lot. And it's because the kettle's not on in there, really. So I agree with you in that it's not this like myth of like, my God, like, if I do these generic posts, I'll eventually hit 40 million followers or 40 million subscribers. That's not the case. But I do think there is a value in keeping the kettle on. And I will say this is that it's not if you're in that keep the kettle on mode, don't spend a lot of time doing it. Like I just repost quickly if I do that. For example, like if I have a YouTube short that I've, let's say designed for YouTube shorts, I will probably also post that in TikTok, even though it's like designed for YouTube shorts, because why not? Like, what skin is it off my back to choose 5 hashtags, write like a little tiny blurb, and just press upload? What if that does get like that real connection that you're talking about? Like, I think those real connections that you're talking about are absolutely like we definitely have community members that have reached out to us, talked to us for years, helped us for years. We've helped them. Some people have been hired. We've referred people for jobs. We've talked, like, there's totally a community there of people that we know, and I'm thankful for them, totally. But the thing is that with social media, I think the issue is that you need to have kind of the kettle on, or else, because here's an example, Mike, is like, we were talking like last year, maybe 2 years ago now, like you wanted to like maybe rekindle your presence on X. And to me, it's if we keep posting somewhere, if let's just say you're a generic posting and you're not really growing that quickly, to me, I think that you wouldn't have to rekindle. I think you're starting with the kindling. You're not starting at a fire. You're not starting at a bonfire, but you're starting at kindling instead of being the person that's like trying to get the first spark on the leaf. That's just my thought on it. This is opinions. Like, these are opinions. Like even with SEO for websites and things like that, you're going to have the same thing where if Mike was expert 1 and I'm expert 2, two SEO experts, we're going to clash on certain things. There's a reason why different agencies, I almost said agents. I guess we're not SEO agents, but SEO experts exist.
Yeah, yeah, to kind of cap it off, I don't think you're necessarily wrong on that. I think you do raise some good points there, where just having someone stumble upon your profile, and if there's nothing there, that could, put them off a little bit. I think that that's a real thing. I think where I differ is, I really think a growth mindset. If you're thinking about, hey, I want to grow. If you want to just stay stagnant, that makes sense. But in a growth situation, I feel like all of your energy should be going on the things that can actually make you grow. And even that little bit of energy that you're spending on those other platforms, unless you can automate it, right? Like, that's totally a thing where you can automate retweeting or but cross, unless you can make it a completely hands off. Like, I feel like that little bit of energy should be spent on whatever platform you're trying to actually grow on. That's my only thing. And I think that will be net more beneficial than the extra generic post on X other platform that gets, one or two
Right.
likes, or may potentially get someone to see it and think that you're legit, like, one or two times, if that happens. Again, yeah, like you said, totally opinion based. Nothing that's like really, monumentally bad about either strategy, in my
No.
opinion. I think that, yeah, your points are very valid, and people should listen to that. And because it's very true that, like, if someone comes on your profile on Instagram, if they see nothing, they could bounce. But
Like I would
if there's no
bounce.
one that you care, yeah, if there's no one that you care about on Instagram to get on your platform, which is saying like a ridiculous statement, to be fair. Like, obviously there's people on Instagram that you want, but like, let's say that that's just really not your target audience. That's not where your target person is. Then maybe you don't care, and maybe that extra little bit of time is better spent interacting with individual X on Blue Sky, or individual on Threads, or on X, or whatever. Like, it's just being more genuine, in my opinion, is going to benefit you way more. Now, having said that, and this is the last thing I'll say, once you establish your audience, once you're in that cycle of, being genuine, you do need those posts on those platforms. Absolutely. You need to have those generic posts of like, hey, I just created this thing, or like, weekly episode posts, whatever, because that's the structured piece of content that you can link back to your website and all that, and people will click on it and help you share it out because they're connected to you and stuff like that. So once you establish your audience, once you have people that care about you, once you establish your brand, those posts are important, and they should be like, you shouldn't be only posting them. They should be, part of your content strategy moving forward, but that's what you're trying to build to. That's where I see it.
But you're going to have so much more data when you're at that stage that you're going
Yeah.
to be able to just execute on the data. Like if Facebook is literally not giving you actually anything, but everyone else, all the other platforms are giving you thousands of buyers or thousands of follows or thousands of comments, okay, like like there's your data where you're like, okay, either I need to invest more time in Facebook or I'm out. And like generally what Mike said, if you're stretched thin, you're not some big corporation, you're going to be like, okay, I'm not going to put any of my time into Facebook. And I also want to say something too, is that a lot of these platform or a lot of these opinions are malleable. So I used to spend like a fair bit of time on Instagram, then a fair bit of time on LinkedIn, whatever. And then I've gone more toward what Mike said. Because like you were saying, like my points are valid, like your points are valid as well, and they affect us in flux. So like Instagram, we were like growing like crazy. Then we weren't. Now TikTok, we're growing like crazy. It's okay. Let's dump more into TikTok. But now I just repost. It's not fully automated, but it quite literally is. Let's say it's an hour for me to make a video on TikTok. It's 10 minutes total for me to post everywhere. And that's a fraction of the time, 1/6 of the time, in fact. Like it's a fraction of the time. And even that 10 minutes, maybe 5 minutes is me strategizing, 6 minutes even is me strategizing on TikTok for the best caption or the best whatever timing, the whole shebang. And then when it posts on TikTok, I'm like, oh yeah, and I just like quickly throw it to the other guys. Like that's totally, so I haven't automated it quite yet, but that's me being in flux with you, right? Where it's, hey, Mike's right about the effort, but I still believe in the kettle being on. How do I achieve that? So it's good to have these debates and things. And like for the listener out there, just to cap things off, I mean, I hope you found this valuable, because if you're like looking to grow on socials for whether it's a client or yourself, or trying to build a community or trying to sell e-commerce stuff, let us know, in the comments big time, because this is a big topic, and it's a big topic for, especially now with, the Black Friday sales, with the holiday sales coming up. It's like, if you're trying to actually sell product, these are big questions. Do I just post like crazy on, what do they call it, TikTok shop? Do I go nuts and try to get the best listing for shop, like literally the shop app for Shopify? What do I do? And it's a good question. Depending on the size of your business and your niche, it's a very good question. And so I think these debates are really important and bring up a lot of good points. So yeah, let us know in any of the comment sections, YouTube, Spotify, all that stuff. And I hope you enjoyed this. A bit of a longer web news, because I just think that this is an important topic, and it's the time of year to talk about it, especially going into a new year as well.
Absolutely.
I think that's it. That's the web news. If you want to hear us talk about this more, because we definitely could, let us know, of course. And this is the web news. I hope you enjoyed it. we're signing off.
Goodbye.